Hey guys, it's Chase with Sherpa Equipment Company. Today we're going to be installing our Thunder Rack on this 2020 Ford F-350. The Sherpa Thunder Rack is going to be able to be used on 2017 and up Super Duty trucks with the Super Crew cab option. So we'll just jump right into what you're going to be receiving in your package from us. You're going to have 8 crossbars. You're going to have all your hardware to mount the rack to the roof. You're going to have your mounting feet, your rubber spacers, a wind fairing, and your side plates. You'll also have a little tube of blue Loctite. We're going to be using that on the mounting bolts that go into the roof. So right off the bat, we're going to just set our side plates aside, as well as our fairing. And we're going to keep 3 crossbars over here on the table. We're going to be setting up the mounting feet right off the bat. And we'll just go ahead and set all of the other crossbars off to the side. So when mounting your mounting feet to your crossbars, we're just going to go one at a time. And you'll notice here that we have front, rear, and middle mounts. One important thing to note on these mounting feet is there's going to be a small notch on the bottom face of the mount. That notch is going to tell you which side the mount goes on. And the easy way to tell is that notch is always going to face the front of the truck. So you're going to want to make sure before you even get ready to install anything that all of your mounts, you have opposing notches on your front and rears. On this rack, the middle mount is not side specific, so that one will not matter. Your rubbers are going to be specific to each mount as well. So you can kind of tell by matching up the spacing of the holes on the rubber with your spacing on your mounting feet. So this one I can tell is going to be the middle rubber. Your front rubber are going to be these four small pucks. And then your rear rubber are going to be the smaller spaced holes on this one. So we'll start with the front mounting feet. And we're just going to jump right into it. You're going to need 4 T-nuts. When installing these mounting feet to the crossbars, you're simply going to take the T-nut, drop it into the track, make sure it sits flat, and going to do that with all 4. It's not going to be very important where you place these. We're going to be able to slide these around after getting them all installed. So we're just going to set them up here in the middle to make it nice and easy. Next, we're going to take our small hex bolts. These are 1/4 with a 1/4 inch washer on them. And we're just going to put our mounting foot upside down with the flat facing bottom facing the outside of the crossbar and thread them into the T-nuts below. You're going to want to leave these loose so you're able to slide the mount back and forth on the crossbar. This is going to be important later on when we're adjusting side to side to make sure the rack sits even in the middle. Okay, so now that we got our front mounts assembled to the crossbar, you can still slide these about easily. I'm going to set that to the side. That'll be going up on the truck next, and we'll do the middle. We're going to do the same thing on the middle. Once again, these are non-side specific, so you don't have to worry too much. It's going to be 4 T-nuts. Dropped into the slots. It's important to note on T-nuts, it does not matter which direction they go, as long as the curved contoured side is facing down into the track and the flat face is facing up as you're installing this. So again, just getting these threaded into the T-nuts, keeping them loose so nothing binds up later on when we're getting everything squared away. And once this one is complete, set it to the side and do the rear. All right, so now before we do anything else with these, we're going to head up to the top of the truck, remove the trim, and we're going to identify which bolts you're going to be removing from the factory hardware. So on this truck, this trim's already been pulled off. Once this trim comes off, it's kind of hard to get back on. So we're going to just set this up to the side. You're going to want to take all the way off from the hard plastic in front to the shiny plastic in the middle, back to the hard plastic on the rear. If you want to reinstall these, we recommend that the front has a small hook, but you might need a little bit of 3M double-sided tape on the back here, and then on the rear you might need to do some 3M double-sided tape as well. So now we're going to identify which bolts you're going to be taking out of the roof. These are going to be in 7mm socket, and you're going to be skipping the first 2 bolts, removing the next 2. Then you're going to be skipping the next 3, removing the next 2 after those 3. Skipping 3 more and removing the final 2. There will be 1 more at the very end. We're not going to touch that one. So again, it's going to be skip 2, remove 2, skip 3, remove 2, skip 3 more, and remove 2. Now that we know which hardware we're going to be removing from the roof, we're going to take 2 of our circular pucks, 1 of our middles, and 1 of our rears, and bring these up to the roof, get those bolts out, and place the rubber over the holes. So now that we've identified which bolts are going to be coming out of the roof, I went down, I got 2 of my rubber plugs for the circular rubber plugs. Those will be going in the front. I got my middle and rear rubber as well. And we have our 7mm socket. One thing to note is these bolts have already been replaced. This is our prototype vehicle, so we have already taken all these out. But you'll notice all these bolts are kind of painted over, and you really have to work through that paint. You're gonna end up chipping some of it off, no big deal. But it's 7mm. You're gonna wanna get that on there and get these bolts out of the roof. We're not gonna be reusing this hardware, so we can go ahead, remove it, and set it to the side. We'll get the rubber on, and then we'll move to the next side. Again, remember that we skipped the first 2, removed the second 2. Now we're skipping the next 3 and removing the 2 after that. And then for the rear, we're going to skip the next 3 again and remove these ones. It's a good thing to note as well while we're up here and we can see it. Ford is very inconsistent with how they lay their hard foam in these channels. We've seen all kinds of different ways they've done it. On this truck, it's nice and out of the way. I know on that side we had to cut a little bit of this foam out of the way. So if you have your foam kind of coming over some of these bolts, you might have to clear it with a blade. You just want to be careful not to scratch your paint, but don't worry about cutting through that. It's really easy to cut through, and then you can free up your bolts so they can be removed. Okay, so now that the correct bolts are removed, we can start placing our rubber over the exposed holes. Pretty easy to line up. We're just going to set it on there. Make sure you're getting a full contact patch on the roof. This is what's going to be sealing your roof and keeping it nice and watertight. These rubbers are not side specific, so as long as you have the right one in the right spot, you'll be all right. And these small little pucks up front are going to go right where the old washers went, and that's going to be for your front mount. Now that we got this side pretty much ready for the crossbars, we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side. Okay, so you'll notice on this side, like I was mentioning earlier, on this side we actually have 2 layers of that hard foam that Ford puts in here for whatever reason. This is where we had to cut it away to make room for that rubber. You'll notice it kind of peels up the paint there as well, but your rubber seal is going to be going over that, sealing it all up. No need to worry, but your truck might be a little different, so just proceed as you need to. All right, so now that all of the rubber spacers are up on the roof, I have Alex in here helping me out. He's got some hardware up there for his side. We're going to go ahead and put the crossbars up on the roof. To do this, we're going to need our M5 hardware, a little bit of blue Loctite, and our crossbars with the mounting feet. What we're going to do is start with the front. This is an important step to make sure your notches are going to be facing the front of the vehicle. So I know my notch is here. It's going to be flipped over. I know this is going to be the driver's side. We'll just go one at a time, get these up there. You're going to want to put a little bit of blue Loctite on your threads before installing it. This will help with keeping them in place, also help with any potential water that could slip through there. Not that that's an issue, just another little bit of extra security. So we're going to bring our crossbar up and just get them started into the roof. Again, before installing, making sure my notch is facing forward, setting that right down on those rubber plugs, and threading them into the existing holes on the roof. We're going to get these finger tight for now. We'll come back and tighten them up once everything's measured and centered up. Here on the middles, we got these non-side specific mounts, so it does not matter which side goes on which. Doing the same thing, lining it up with the holes on the roof, and just threading them in. And finally the rear. This one is side specific, and see, we got that one backwards, so we're going to spin it around. Notch is always facing forward, and same thing. You'll notice that all of our crossbars, nothing's centered up yet, everything's loose. You can slide these back and forth with ease. That's going to help a lot in the next step when we're getting the tape measure out and centering it up. Okay, now that all of the bolts are started into the roof on both sides, we have an 8mm socket now, and we're going to go work our way from back to front to back, whatever, and tighten these things down. It's very easy to over tighten these rubbers, especially the front, so you're going to want to be very careful. You're going to want to tighten just until this bonded washer down here compresses, and you don't want it to even go completely flat. Just as soon as you start to see it compress and the rubbers start to push out a little bit, that's more than enough. So you want to be really careful not to over tighten. So here's a good example of how tight you need to be getting them. The rubber's just starting to push out around the edges, and the bonded washer is just starting to cave down in. So you can tighten these hypothetically forever, but you want to just watch that real carefully and stop when it looks like that. So as you can see, when we were tightening these down, we used a ratchet and a socket, some just by hand. If you use an impact on this, you will over tighten it, guaranteed, and then you might have some water issues. So you want to be very careful. We'll have some torque specs on the website in the instructions, but definitely use hand tools, no power tools on this install especially, and just be very careful. All right, so now we get to the centering up portion of this. Alex is over there with the tape measure. I have a tape measure over here. And the way we measure to get this centered up is we go from, it doesn't matter if you do the front or the back, but the inside face of the mount, get the tape measure on that, and then go to the edge of the crossbar. So we just did this off camera, but on the front, we're coming in around 4.5. The middle, we're coming in around 4 1/8, and then the rear about 4 1/4. These numbers may vary a little bit for you, so definitely double check, but it's a good place to start. And again, from the inside face of the mount to the outside edge of the crossbar. So now that we got all of the crossbars centered up, even on both sides, we're going to move forward to tightening these hex bolts that go from the bottom of the mounting foot up into the crossbar. To do that, I have a 7/16 ratcheting wrench, and you're going to want to tighten these. A lot of people over tighten these as well. You're going to want to just go until you hear that T-nut start to bite in the channel down there, and then maybe a little bit more, but we have customers all the time snap these bolts because they pry on them a little too hard. Those T-nuts really bite hard and will hold very strongly. So at this point, everything now up on the truck is tightened down, centered up. We're ready for side plates. So I got my side plates out here. We'll go over real quick which holes you're going to be using, or which slots you're going to be using to mount the crossbars to. You're going to have your first short slot behind your fairing mount. That's going to be your front crossbar. You're going to have a middle slot right here. It's also about the same length. It'll be your middle mount, and then your other short rear slot here right above the mount, and that's going to be your rear. So if you're doing this by yourself, an easy way I like to do it, I just like to grab two T-nuts, or two socket buttons with their washers, and head up to the truck. And I always like to grab from the top of the side plate. Makes it a little easier so you're not getting your finger stuck underneath. And I always start in the middle. So I'll get my socket button through the mounting slot, being careful not to rest it on the paint anywhere. And I'll just start getting that threaded in. I'm not going to go crazy with it. Then I'll move to either the rear or front, whichever one's easiest, and do the same there, get that threaded in. Now that'll hold it enough so it's not resting on the paint anywhere. And then we'll move forward and get the front in and the other remaining two, and we'll move to the other side. So you'll notice I have all 6 socket buttons in now. I have everything loose though. I'm going to keep this all loose until I get the other side on and a couple crossbars in. That way I can move the rack forward and back depending on where it needs to sit on the truck to match the curve of the body. So we'll leave that loose. We'll get the other side plate up and kind of go forward with moving it forward and back to get the correct fitment. So now our side plates are installed loosely on both sides. Everything's still being able to be moved. This is where I'm going to step back, look at it from the side profile, and I'm going to match the spline of the rack to the roof of the truck. So I can tell here my rack's probably sitting a little too far back, so I'll simply just tap that up a little bit, recheck, see if I'm happy with the curve. I'm pretty happy with that. The front is always a good place to kind of base off of. You can see that that looks real good. So I'll probably get that, find a nice spot here so I can mimic it on the other side, double check that one, and then tighten those down. So I'm tightening this down now, and I noticed that the rear mounting slot, the crossbar is sitting dead center in that, so it's really easy to go over there, set that one up dead center, just double check it, and then I'll probably be able to tighten that one down too. And once those are all tight, we'll throw the crossbars on. Okay, so now we're on the other side. I remember that the rear slot, the crossbar sits pretty much dead center. I'm going to just line that up because we still have everything loose. I'm going to step back, double check it. So at this point, we have a couple things of hardware left. We got 5 crossbars in our fairing. We're going to come back over. We're going to take one of our crossbars, set it aside. That's going to be our fairing crossbar. And I'm going to take the remaining 4 up. We got Alex on the other side again, and we're going to get these last crossbars installed. Looks like with this setup, we're going to be able to do 1 crossbar per slot. You can set these up any way you need that best fits your usage. So now all of our crossbars are up. Everything's still loose. You can adjust these back and forth as you need, depending on what you want to use your rack for. We also offer extra crossbars. Depending on availability, we sell both scratch and dent and new. So if you need more crossbars for your application, check out the website. But now we're just going to tighten one side down at a time. What this will do is, as we get one side tight, it'll automatically square up the other side of the crossbar, which will have us with or leave us with a even rack. So the final step here, we're going to be installing the fairing. We're going to take our remaining hardware. It's going to be 6 T-nuts and our short socket buttons with their washers. I like to install this by flushing up both ends of the fairing and the crossbar with the fairing in front. Make an imaginary line from the fairing holes to the crossbar, and that's where I'm going to drop my T-nuts in. I'm going to do this in all 6 holes. Again, does not matter which way the T-nuts go as long as the flat side is up. And once those are all in, we are going to take the fairing and drop it over the top of the crossbar. I like to start with the middle bolts. I think they're the easiest to adjust afterwards. So we'll get those threaded into the T-nuts below. Again, like everything else, we're leaving it loose until they're all in. That way we can slide the fairing on the crossbar to expose the rest of them. And we'll do this with all 6. So now all 6 are started. I'm going to take my hands on both ends of the crossbar, just slide the fairing till it's flush with the ends of the crossbar. You shouldn't be able to feel any big gaps or lips. Once those are all flush, we'll go ahead, take our Allen again and tighten these down. Now that these are tight, we're going to call in our friend one more time for help and give him 2 socket buttons, and we're just going to install this like any of the other crossbars on the rack. And just going to want to be careful to not drop your fairing on your roof. You want to protect the paint. And it's sometimes easier to let the one side get their bolts in started first so you're not fighting each other. And once they're both started, we're going to set the fairing up so it's about 1/4 inch off the roof. That's our ideal spacing. Might sit a little different depending on how your rack's sitting on your truck, but we're looking for around 1/4 inch. Okay, once you're happy with your spacing all the way across, you can get it tightened down. If you have any kind of wind noise issues right off the bat, this is the best place to start. Moving these fairings, even 1/16 of an inch up or down, can make a huge difference in the sound you're hearing in the cab. So if you get any kind of weird whistling or vibration, definitely start here. All right, so now that the fairing is on and tight, that's going to be the complete install. If you need any help during this install, please don't hesitate to reach out, shoot me an email or give me a call. I'd be happy to help. It's a good idea after having this rack on for a couple weeks or driving a couple 100 miles to go through your hardware, make sure everything's still tight. If everything's still tight at that point, you should be good to go. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Other than that, truck looks great, rack looks great. Thanks for watching.